All right, welcome to Black Swan's Hardcore Bible. So today we're going to be continuing on with our Samson series, our Danite series, and we're going to be diving in to Samson's life. So I thought I would mix things up a little bit and do this live and treat this just like a Bible study. Basically, we're just sitting down, having a look at the scripture. I don't have any notes, but I have the scripture. I'm reading out of the King James Bible. I'm not going to necessarily do this verse by verse, I don't think. But this is one of my absolute favorite stories. I love this. So I hope you get something out of this. I hope we can find something new as well that maybe we never discovered together, because there are times where I will read the Bible over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden a nugget jumps out. So that's one of our goals, is to try and see if we can glean something from this story, and then just share my thoughts as we go, and we'll see how it goes. And I just want to say hi to everyone. It's a Friday night. Nothing like having a Bible study for bed, before the bedtime. Tomorrow I have to get up early, and I got to go get my teeth cleaned tomorrow. So my daughter actually is a dental assistant. So she's going to be working on my teeth tomorrow morning. Well, actually, no, she isn't. There's another lady that's going to be doing the cleaning. But a few days ago, I had a filling as well. So my daughter was there. It's kind of interesting getting your teeth worked on while your daughter's there. So it's kind of a different thing, right? Makes me appreciate the dentist a little bit more as well, because hey, you're in good hands. All right, so let's just dive into this. So the last episode we were talking about Samson basically being born. An angel came down, talked to Manoah, talked to his wife, and said that no razor is going to come upon this guy's head, and he's going to be a Nazarite from birth to the end of his life. Meaning that the only way that he is free from this vow is when he dies. So if he dies at an early age, he is coincidentally released from the vow, because it is to be for his entire life. And that's something interesting. And the way that the vow works, the Nazarite vow, is, let's just say you made a vow and you said, you know what, for 2 weeks, I'm going to, I don't know, maybe I'm going to go out and plow a field, or whatever it is, whatever your vow is, and you're going to dedicate the harvest to the Lord, or whatever you come up with. And let's say before 2 weeks are over, maybe 1 week into the vow, you realize that your ox or whatever got sick or died or whatever. So now you got to go back to town. You got to go purchase another ox. And let's just say that took you a few days to do that. Well, you said that you're going to have your vow for 2 weeks, but now you basically broke your vow, your promise, your deadline. So what happens is you would shave your head. From my understanding of the vow, is you would shave your head, you'd go to the priest, and then that vow would start all over. So if it's a 2-week vow and you're halfway done the vow, if you break it, it's not a sin. It just means you start all over again. So you shave your head, and then you start your vow again as though you'd never done it. So you start on day 1 again. So this is why you want to finish your vow if you're a Nazarite, because otherwise you just keep starting over and over again, because that's your promise, was to fulfill the vow. If you don't fulfill it, you're going to be stuck in that little vortex. That's why it was very serious for the Israelites whenever they took a vow that they would not make a vow unless they were 100% sure that they can complete the vow. So we'll notice later that Samson breaks right out of the gate almost 2 out of 3 of his vows. So we're gonna see that here. We saw, we're gonna see this. So we're gonna dive into this. But I think it's important to have context in regards to how a vow works. If you start it and you mess up and you can't complete it, you start all over again from scratch. So if it took you, say your vow was 6 months and you're 5 months, 28 days in and you break your vow, you start all over again. You got another 6 months. So that's the interesting thing about a Nazarite vow, and maybe some people didn't realize that. All right, so, man, we got, who do we have here? We have Regina. Is it Regina on here? We also have Justica. We have Rick. We have KFT, not to be confused with KFC. We also have Jay-Z Joe and Salty Decimator. Pretty cool. So small crowd tonight, but that's okay. That's okay. It's late at night. Like, you guys should be in bed. But I felt like doing a late night Bible study. Sometimes it's fun to do something like this late at night. So, okay. So Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. So if you're just reading this on a surface level, you're going to be like, Samson shouldn't have been doing this, which is true. But if you've read 13 chapters, you'll quickly realize that this was a thing that Israel was doing. What is the thing? They were intermarrying with the Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Gershonites, the Hittites, every type of ite. They were intermarrying. And by the time we get to this, we're about 200 years in, roughly. Like the entire book of Judges, from Joshua getting into the land of Canaan to Samuel, the last judge, you're looking at about 350 years, because when Solomon built his temple, we know, and I think it was mentioned in 1 Kings somewhere, after Solomon built the temple, that it was built 480 years after the Exodus, meaning after Israel entered into the promised land. So there was a clock. As soon as they entered in, there was a clock of about 480 years until the temple was built. This is a huge gap. That's a huge time frame. And by the time we get to Samson, you could say he's been the Israelites have been 250 to 300 years already in the land, in the promised land, and they're still having trouble defeating all of these nations that are there. They were getting their butts handed to them constantly. And whenever they get into trouble, they would call out for a savior, a judge. And Samson is a type of Christ figure. He's a savior. He's a judge. An angel showed up proclaiming the birth of Samson. There's only a few people that happened with. I think one was Hannah. Another one was John the Baptist, and then Jesus Christ. And maybe there was another one, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Other than, Sarah, obviously, that was a big deal. It's kind of a big deal to Israel. Other than we get little glimpses of women wondering what's going on in their little tum-tum, especially, I think one woman, I think it was Rebecca, who had twins in her, basically jockeying for position. She's like, what's going on here? And the Lord revealed that you're actually having twins. That's why they're at each other. So here we see Samson wanting to, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines and basically wanted to marry her. And I find this interesting because, again, we're past the stage of commingling. Like, this is something that they've been doing for 300 years. So to be offended at it now and go, oh, he shouldn't be doing that. His parents already said that. Isn't there anyone else? So this is we're not trying to form our judgment and say, Samson, you bad boy, you, and then close the book and say, I can't read it. This is history. This is what Israel was known to do, was to worship every other god under the sun. And that's history. That's what they were doing. And in the midst of that, we get this warrior named Samson. So Samson went down to Timnah. Every once in a while, I'm going to look at the comments as well. I think it's a good idea to read along with me if you have your Bible on you, if you have a King James Bible or another version if you have, and just flip over to Judges 14 because this is where we're going to be spending some time. And so we see Samson going down to Timnah, sees a woman in Timnah, the daughter of the Philistines, and he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. He wanted to marry her. And his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren? Like, is there never going to be a woman from one of the tribes of Israel, Samson? Like, seriously, you can't find anyone in any of the tribes? Or among all my people that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? So this is also a slant to the Philistines, that they're uncircumcised. They would be basically considered heathen, Gentiles, heathen, non-Israelites. This community is uncircumcised. So to say that this was a normal thing to have people circumcised is not true at all. This is a thing that was dedicated for the Israelites, perhaps, and this is why we call this the Hardcore Bible, because sometimes we have to talk about issues that maybe you can't talk about on a Sunday morning. But imagine a couple, one from Israel, one not from Israel, and they're going to be intimate with each other. I'm pretty sure the woman's going to notice that something's a little bit different from these men. Something's different. They're circumcised. And they're going to be asking the question, what the deal is, what the problem is here. And then he's going to have to explain that it was a promise through God to Abraham, saying that because of Abraham's faith, and Abraham believed, and it was credited to him as righteousness, that he was righteous, he was saved, he was a believer, that the seal was circumcision to seal that belief. Just like when we're saved today as a Christian, we believe in Jesus Christ and we are circumcised around our hearts unto Jesus Christ. You can't uncircumcise that once it's done. It's circumcised. You're sealed forever. So don't think that they're not having that conversation over wine, going, I've never seen anything like that. Is that something that I should be a little nervous from? Or do you have some kind of a skin disease or something that I need to know about? And Samson would probably be like, well, no, this is what we do. This is our promise. We're circumcised Israelites. It's kind of a weird thing, right? So his father says, isn't there anyone else among all our people? Like, why do you have to go to these uncircumcised Philistines? Samson said unto his father, get her for me. Get her for me. She pleases me well. So he wanted his parents to go and make the transaction, to go and request that she be made his wife. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So the Philistines were dominating Israel at this time, and God was looking for an opportunity and saw that Samson was in love with this woman, and this would be a good opportunity for Israel to take revenge on the Philistines, especially because of the way that they actually treated Samson. So Samson had an excuse to go after them, and you'll see this here. Then went Samson down and his father and his mother to Timnah. So all three of them went down and came to the vineyards of Timnath. It's interesting that they come to the vineyards. Samson's, one of his 3 vows is not to touch a dead animal, not to eat anything unclean, and not to drink of the vine of the vineyard. It's interesting that they end up going close to a vineyard of the Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. So they weren't together, even though it says the 3 of them went down. Maybe Samson was taking his time. Maybe he sent his parents ahead and he was going to meet up with them later. We don't know how much time, but we know here that they weren't together based on the few verses down the road. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him as he would rent a kid. So he basically ripped this lion in half. And he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or mother what he had done. So he killed a lion, which is taboo. Not so much the killing of a lion. Obviously, you can argue this was self-defense, but he's now touching a dead carcass, and that was taboo. He wasn't supposed to do that. So you have a young lion coming against him, and he rips it apart. Not a full-grown lion, mind you, but it says a young lion comes at him, and he rips it apart, and he had nothing in his hands. So he did it with his bare hands. He went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time, he returned to take her and turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. So after a while, turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. For some reason, he was drawn back to that lion. Maybe, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever been in a fender bender. Maybe you have a severe crash and you're like, man, that almost cost me my life. I remember exactly where that was. And sometimes you drive by that street and you remember exactly where you were when your car got totaled. I had a car totaled when I was on Deerfoot. I disintegrated a truck, a Ford Ranger. Thank God I was in a Ford Ranger. Hit a patch of ice, spun around, hit the meridian, airbags deployed, and then went across 4 lanes just as a bunch of semis went by. So they just missed me. I almost died. So every time I go on that stretch of the road, I'm like, I know exactly what was happening here. Thank God for a Ford Ranger. Those trucks are solid, I'm telling you. It disintegrated, but I was okay. Not a scratch. Not the one scratch. So you remember this. So Samson went down After a time, he returned to take her, basically to be his wife. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. Behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. So this doesn't happen just overnight. So this flesh was rotting, and these bees were attracted to it and decided to make a nice little home inside the lion. And he took thereof in his hands and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. But he told not them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. And this reminds me of Adam and Eve, when Eve took of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and then gave it to her husband who was with her. This is the same instance, except this time Samson didn't tell his parents where he got the honey from. Probably caught up to them. And then, hey, look, I got some honey. And they're like, oh man, I'm famished. Thank you. But he never told them that he got it from the carcass of a dead lion. I would almost argue that that's what happened with Eve, because if you think about it, in the Garden of Eden, there was more than one tree that was very nice to look at. A lot of the trees were very good, and I would add, very delicious. Imagine having your choice of the most delicious fruit that you can ever imagine in the Garden of Eden. Rich nutrition, perfect sunlight, perfect soil, everything is growing nice, the humidity is perfect, everything. And every time you take a bite into a piece of fruit, you're like, oh, this is amazing. I can't wait to show my husband this. I'm going to take 2 or 3. And then she'd go to the next tree, and then the next tree. And we don't know how long they were doing this for. We don't know if Adam was doing the same thing somewhere else. Maybe he was 2 or 3 trees over. Don't know. Grabs the fruit, hands it to him while he's looking at other fruit trees like, yeah, this is good. Yum, yum, yum. Tap on the shoulders like, yeah, okay, thank you. Oh, wow, this looks really good. Num, num, num. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness. What did we do? We're naked. Because notice when God said, what did you do? Didn't I tell you not to eat of the tree of good and evil? He says, the woman that you gave me, she gave me this fruit and I ate it. And he said to Eve, what did you do? The serpent tricked me. So it's interesting because this kind of mirrors that a little bit. Took thereof in his hands and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. Let's just double check this. Let's have a look-see back to Genesis chapter 3. Let's just see here. Where are you? I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked. So let's just back up here. When the woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes, both of them, were open. That seems very similar to, and he took thereof in his hands and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. She gave him, and he did eat. Kind of the same thing going on here. And he didn't tell him. But I think in the case of Adam, he was close enough to go, hey, whoa. Did you just give me? I just ate this. And we've done it to each other. I'm sure sometime in history, we've given someone something and they're like, oh man, I can't believe you gave me that. I told you I don't like that stuff. I don't like sushi. I don't like McDonald's French fries or whatever it is. I actually remember watching a documentary on War of the Worlds, and I was just mesmerized by it. I was like, oh man, I can't believe that the whole country was falling for this radio story that was read by Orson Welles. And he was reading from his book about an alien invasion that was imminent, and people all over North America, arguably all over the States, wherever they heard this transmission, they thought it was the real deal, that they're actually being invaded by Martians from Mars. And some people, rumor has it, unlifed themselves, brought guns to the party, all kinds of stuff. And I was listening to this documentary. I'm like, this is unbelievable what people are falling for. And my brother-in-law came up to me with some cookies, and he's like, hey, you want some? I'm like, sure. And I grabbed some and I put them in my mouth. I'm like, blah. And he started laughing. It was actually like kibbles and bits, like it was dog food. And I couldn't believe my brother-in-law. And he was just laughing, and I'm spitting out the dog food, but I was so enraptured in this story that I trusted him to give me something that I would like, and he gave me dog food, and I'm eating it. I'm just like, oh, what is this stuff? And he's just laughing. So I kind of picture that same thing in the Garden of Eden. Adam's looking at this beautiful tree, looking at these animals that he named and all this kind of stuff. Maybe he's naming animals. All of a sudden he's like, here, try this fruit. What did you do? It's kind of how I picture it going down. Types and shadows for sure. So his father went down unto the woman, and Samson there a feast. And Samson made there a feast. For so used the young man to do. For so used the young man to do. So this is the tradition. The dad and the mom went down to meet the woman, and Samson went there, and Samson made a feast. So he was in charge of the feast. And this is what the young man would do. So this is kind of like a pattern. Like if you think about Jesus preparing a feast for the bride, it's kind of interesting, right? And it came to pass when they saw him that they brought 30 companions to be with him. It's kind of a tradition so that the bridegroom wouldn't be by himself. Some friends came along for the ride. Samson said unto them, I will now put forth a riddle unto you, if ye can certainly declare it me within the 7 days of the feast. Again, we have 7 days now. And find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. So, but I need you to explain this riddle to me. I'm going to tell you a riddle. And if you get it, I'm going to give you guys each 30 garments and 30 sheets. Interesting, 30 sheets. Very interesting. Not sure what that would mean exactly. I haven't looked into that. 30 sheets could be for clothing, perhaps, besides the garments, maybe blankets. It's interesting, right? If ye cannot declare it to me, then shall ye give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. So he's pretty confident in this riddle. And they said unto him, put forth thy riddle, that we might hear it. And he said unto them, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness, and they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. So 3 days go by, and they're probably just pulling their hair out trying to figure this out. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they said unto Samson's wife, entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle, lest we burn thee and thy father's house with fire. So they threaten her. They threaten her life, not only her life, but they threaten her father's life as well with fire. They were going to burn her and her father and her whole family to the ground. Have ye called us to take that we have? Is it not so? basically, have you invited us to this wedding to take away our clothes so that we walk away from your wedding naked? Is that why we're here? Or like, do I amuse you in some way? Is there something about us that amuses you? This almost feels like the Goodfellas, right? And Samson's wife wept before him, an emotional tactic that I would say works 90% of the time, crying, and said, thou dost but hate me. You hate me. So imagine she's crying all night long and pouring out her tears, and Samson's like, hey, we're not even on our honeymoon yet. Like, this is just the engagement party. And tell me what's wrong. And she's like, no, tell me. It's like, no, all night. And then finally she's like, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? And lovest me when you don't even love me? Why do you hate me and you don't love me? Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it me. And he said unto her, behold, look, I have not told it to my father nor my mother. Shall I tell it thee? This is kind of interesting. Again, if you're playing off of the idea that Samson is a type of Christ, and she's crying, you hate me, you don't even love me because you're not telling me this riddle. And he said, I didn't even tell it to my father. I didn't even tell it to my mother. I kept it secret. But she got it out of him. She got it out of him. So maybe there's some kind of interesting dynamic, because we are the bride of Christ, that when we ask him, I believe, especially when it comes to scripture, like, Lord, I want to know what this is about. I believe he'll give you the answers. He'll explain it to you through the Holy Spirit, because the role of the Holy Spirit is to teach us all things and to remind us of everything that Jesus Christ has said. And she wept before him the 7 days. So after 3 days, he didn't tell her, and they couldn't figure it out. Then they came to her and said, we're going to kill you and your father, and we're going to burn your house down. So for 4 days, she bawled day and night, bawling. She wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. So during the day, normal. Put the makeup on, driving to church. Have you ever had that where you're driving to church and on the way to the church, you get in an argument, or maybe you get in a fight with your spouse the night before or that morning, trying to get the kids off to church. And by the time you get to church, you step on holy ground and you're like, oh, nothing is wrong here. We are a perfect family today. We have no sin. We are perfect. And you enter into the church, and then you go home and you argue and you cry and you bawl all night long. This is the case for this couple here. And so she wept before him 7 days while the feast lasted, and it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she lay sore upon him, that she told the riddle to the children of her people. So the second he told her, she went out and told the Philistines. And the men of the city said unto him, of the 7th day, on the 7th day before the sun went down, that was close. They almost had to go find 30 sheets and 30 garments. This was a close call. Sun was going down. Before the sun was going down. It's interesting that Samson's name means sun going down of the sun. That's what Samson means. Interesting, right? So these guys show up. It's on the 7th day, just before the sun goes down. What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion And he said unto them, meaning Samson, if ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. And I think this is the rule of first mentions, if you will. I think this is the first time. Well, no, this isn't the first time. We've seen, I believe we've seen heifer mentioned in Exodus, the separation of water. We see a heifer needs to be, I think, a year old or 3 years old, something like that, female. And here he's equating to these guys saying, if you didn't plow with my heifer, and remember, if you think Samson's just calling her a cow, I think that's an incorrect way of looking at this, because heifers were probably precious to the Israelites, at least in some time in history, because they're rare. And the idea behind them is if you kill a red heifer, you can actually use the ashes to separate, to purify yourself. You put it into a jar of water, and that's the water of separation. So you wash your clothes, all this kind of stuff in it, and you're purified. So if you didn't plow with my pure wife, if you didn't plow with my beautiful wife that I'm in love with, that she is my prized possession. If you didn't do this, if you didn't treat her like dirt, plowing with her, like you don't touch a heifer. Not like that. Like it has to be unyoked. You don't send it off to work to plow the fields. That's what cattle do, not heifers. So you would dare plow with my heifer? With my wife, my beautiful wife? You're plowing with her? If you didn't do that, she wouldn't have told it to you. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, if ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, so he went up to his father's house. So he took his ball and went home, and his father-in-law thought he hated his wife, because he was mad. He went out and killed, he was mad enough to go out and kill 30 men, tore their clothes off, got 30 sheets for them, probably their bedding. If they were people, maybe they're going from one town to the next, he found a group of 30 guys camping out one night, beat the vinegar out of them, and then took their bedding, took their clothes, left them for naked because they're dead, and then was mad, went home. Samson's wife was given to his companion. So on top of it now, again, it's interesting if we're doing this type of Christ thing, that his wife that he loved was given to someone else. Sad. Samson's wife was given to his companion, the one that plowed with his wife, saying, if you don't tell me, I'm going to kill you and your father. And one of these 30 married Samson's wife. Brutal, man. Brutal. Whom he had used as his friend. He thought this was his best friend. Betrayed by his best friend. Took his wife. But it came to pass within a while after, in the time of the wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid. And it's interesting that now we're in the wheat harvest. So if you want to talk rapture type scenarios, all this kind of stuff, this is after the feast. You got the wheat harvest. Jesus talks about the fields are ripe, ready to harvest, all this kind of stuff. So Samson comes at this time to get his wife with a kid. And he said, I will go into my wife into the chamber. but her father would not suffer him to go in. Most likely because now at this time she's married to someone else. And her father said, I verily thought that thou hadst utterly hated her. Therefore I gave her to thy companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. Now, we get the idea here that people are always saying, well, Samson was just a player. That's all he was. Well, he actually loved this woman. He actually had a wife. And he was betrayed. And don't think the spirit of jealousy didn't enter upon Samson after hearing that his wife was given to one of the companions that betrayed him. So you now have a jealous husband. Jealous. How do we know this, that he wasn't so much a player? Well, he didn't want the younger sister. It's like, no, I'm going to avenge. I'm going to be guiltless of what I'm about to do to you guys because of what you did to me. Basically, stormed away angry. Like he's just, I think this is just going on in his head. Because Samson said concerning them, now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines. He fulfilled his obligations. He took off, killed these guys, gave them their garments, and they took his wife. Horrible. Though I do them a displeasure, I'm going to be blameless in this one. They took my wife. Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took firebrands and turned to tail and put a firebrand in the midst of two tails. Now you might be wondering, why would Samson do something like this? Well, he was doing it to get their attention. 300 foxes can cause a lot of damage in the fields, most likely decimating their crops, their wheat. Remember, it's the time of wheat harvest. This is the time where the wheat is at its fullest and is ready to be harvested. So he took the foxes, caught them. That tells you how fast this guy was to be able to catch two foxes at a time, tie their tails together. Don't think the foxes weren't trying to bite him either. And then let him go. And then he did that to 300 foxes. Decimated their whole economy. The Philistines' economy is decimated in this region. He got their attention. When he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and the olives. So this isn't your average fire where you can just put it out. He burnt up all their crops for that year, meaning this winter, no food for you, Philistines, especially in this region. You got no food anymore. And you don't got any wine or grapes. Burnt down to the core, meaning you don't even have anything for next year. It's burnt right down. And we see an instance of this in the book of Exodus when Moses is calling down plagues onto Egypt, that the plagues just wiped out the majority of the crops of the Egyptians, but it didn't go all the way down to the stubble. There was still stubble left, meaning they could have ate next year. However, the locusts came after and cleaned up everything. Like there was nothing left. So decimated that whole, those 10 events single-handedly, I believe, allowed for the collapse of the Bronze Age. And scholars today are still like, we don't know why the Egyptians collapsed, like the Bronze Age collapsed. It's just kind of weird that all of a sudden it just went like this, nothing. It's like, well, yeah, it's because over 1 million Jews left Egypt and spoiled them, took all their silver and gold and jewelry and everything, and then all their firstborn was smoked, all their leaders, all the inheritance gone, all the firstborn animals decimated, their crops decimated, all their gods humiliated, and then they lost their army. decimated. That alone would tell you that would single-handedly cause the collapse of the Bronze Age, because the Egyptians were known to send seafarers out into the Mediterranean Sea to go hunting for tin and for copper so that they can make bronze, because they had ports all over the Mediterranean Sea to be able to later formulate copper. Copper was a big deal to the Egyptians. So was tin. So was bronze. But you need tin and bronze to make copper. So Samson causes massive economic loss to the Philistines. He burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn and the vineyards. All the vineyards and all the olive trees gone. They get no food for next year. Then the Philistines said, "Who hath done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife." So now we get a cause. Samson's wife was given to someone else because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. So now the Philistines figure this out. Who lit this whole crop on fire? And it's Samson, and now they know why. Because his wife was given to one of his friends. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. Burnt them. Killed them. So if you think Samson was mad before because you gave his wife that he was in love with, that he married, and didn't want the younger daughter, and instead he went and burnt the crops down, and then now you kill his wife and her father? Samson said unto them, "Though ye have done this, yet I will be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. I am not stopping till I revenge myself on you." Spirit of jealousy is overwhelming Samson. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. I never picked that up before. That's kind of interesting. He went down and dwelt in the top of the rock of Etam. It's almost like he's done and then went and sat on top of a rock, the highest place. Perhaps waiting for another battle. Perhaps trying to be in a line of sight to see if anyone else was going to attack him for what he had just done. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why are ye come up against us?" And they answered, "To bind Samson, we are come up to do to him as he has done to us." So now they're reversing it, saying, we're going to do to him what he did to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Etam. It's interesting. I wonder what this rock means. Etam. It's interesting. I never picked up on that. Rock of Etam. Meaning, what is it? Let's do a little search. Rock of Etam, mentioned in Judges, hosts a significant meaning both geographically and symbolically. And he smote the hip and thigh and then went to the top of the rock Etam. These verses, we see the rock of Etam was a hiding place or a stronghold where Samson retreated after attacking the Philistines. The name Etam means place of the bird, which is interesting, linked to an eagle or a hawk. It's interesting that the Danites, I think one of their flags was like an eagle and serpents. It's a stronghold or a fortress fitting its role as a defensive location. So he went into this place knowing that he can hold out and defend himself there. Or a lair or a refuge. It's interesting, right? So if Samson is a warrior, it would make sense that he would go to a high place. It's almost like, how the Jedi's, Anakin, it's over. I have the higher ground. It's probably where they got this idea from. So, where was this rock? Some scholars suggest it was located in the Judean wilderness, southwest of Bethlehem, or near the border of the Philistine-controlled territory. It was likely a cave system or natural rock formation. So perhaps he went into the rock and maybe there's a cave system where he can actually escape. Don't know. It's interesting because that whole land of Gaza is full of caves. Maybe that's its natural environment to have caves because of the water coming and going on the coastline. It's interesting, right? Josephus, a Jewish historian, mentioned Samson fleeing to a mountain cave, which might be the same site. So, symbolism, this is a place of divine protection, refuge, and strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. Maybe this is where that idea came from. Rock of Etam can symbolize God's protection. The men of Judah confronted Samson, rebuking him instead of supporting him. This shows how Israel had grown passive under Philistine rule rather than fighting back. Notice nobody came to Samson's aid. These 3,000 weren't coming to defend Samson and say, we're with you, bruh. We're with you. They came to arrest him and deliver him to the Philistines. And what's interesting about this is what happened to Israel. And maybe this is an echo of how they treated Samson. This would happen to them later. They would get captured by the Babylonians. And as they were being taken away, the Edomites would celebrate. They would skip for joy because they're on the other side of the Jordan. Every time they saw one of the Jewish homes ransacked and captured, the Jews captured, the Israelites captured, the southern tribe, Judah, Benjamin, and Levite, they were captured and taken away. The Edomites were celebrating, and what would happen is if they saw some of the Israelites fleeing to Edom, they would capture them, bind them up, just like what they were doing, what Judah was doing to Samson. They bound him with ropes, new ropes. The Edomites would do the same thing. They would capture any Israelis, or Israelites, I should say, fleeing from the Babylonians, and they would capture them, and they would take them personally, give them a personal escort to Babylon, and then sell them for a prostitute. One night on the town. Go sleep with a hooker because they turned in an Israelite. Or they would do it for a pair of shoes. And God said, you know what? I'm going to remember how you treated Israel when you're fleeing. You broke the brotherly code. And this is kind of what Judah is doing with Samson in some ways. And we'll see this here. Then the Philistines went up, pitched in Judah, and spread themselves, Lehi, basically surrounding them. The men of Judah said, why are you come up? To bind Samson, or we come to do to him as he come to do to us? And 3,000 men went to Samson. Knowest that thou, the Philistines, are rulers over us? Don't you know that these are our masters? Like, how can you do this thing? What is this that thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, as they did unto me, so have I done unto them. And they said unto him, we are come down to bind thee, that we may deliver thee into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said unto them, swear unto me that ye will not fall upon me yourself. And they spake unto him, saying, no, but we will bind thee fast and deliver thee into their hand, but surely we will not kill thee. We promise, we're not going to kill you. They bound him with 2 new cords and brought him up from the rock, from Edom. And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, like they were going to take him out. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, and heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramath Lehi. And he was sore athirst, and calleth on the Lord, and said, Thou hast given me this great deliverance unto the hand of thy servant, and now shall I die of thirst, and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? That was his question. Like, I'm dying of thirst here. I'm so weak right now that if any more Philistines were around and they capture me, they're going to abuse me. They're going to rape me. They're going to abuse me and kill me. And is this the way that you want me to go out after a battle like this? I just killed 1,000 guys, and now I can't defend myself. I'm so thirsty. But God clave a hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water there out. It's like the world's first water bottle. And when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived. Wherefore he called the name thereof En Hakor, which is in Lehi, unto this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. So he had been battling it out for 20 years. So in our next episode, we are going to be diving into Delilah. And again, most people know this story, but I hope to uncover something with this. And I think, man, the story gets better and better and better. I hope you guys enjoyed today's hardcore Bible study. I had fun, and what a nice way to actually end the night. Have a nice little Bible study, go to bed thinking about this. Hope you guys got something out of it. And I'll see you guys in another video, I am sure. Don't forget to join us on Sunday as well. Right now it's 11:50 p.m., my friend. 11:50 p.m. So it's almost midnight here. Almost midnight. Where is everyone while we're at it here? It's like 26 people on here. So where is everyone from? Let's have a good look before I go to bed here. I'm in Alberta, Canada, but where are you guys all from? Watching. Is it morning where you're from? Is it earlier? Are you out of North America? Are you from South Korea? Where are you from when you're watching this video? Let's see here if we see 2 o'clock almost. Ontario. Got some Ontario. 2 a.m. What else do we got here? Got some Canadians here. This is awesome. Canadians like to stay up late. California. Wow. Pretty cool. Oklahoma City. It's 12:51. Kansas. Or is that Kentucky? Kentucky, I think. Awesome. I've never been to Kentucky. Been to California briefly. In an airport. Pennsylvania. I think I've been through Pennsylvania. I think briefly. We used to live in Minnesota for a year. Who else? What else do we have? We got some Ontarians here. Indiana. Indy 500. Wasn't that just on? Or was that the Daytona 500? I think the Daytona. Where is the Daytona 500? I think that was on last weekend. Indy 500. Don't those guys that put on the Indy 500, isn't that like the largest crowd in the world? Let's see. Bubba News, how you doing? All right. thank you guys for watching. I am going to hit the hay. I'm a little bit tired now, but I hope you guys got something. We've been going at it for about an hour now, so that's not too bad. Not too bad, not too shabby. Thank you guys for sticking around. Appreciate you guys. And I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.